Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm sharing 3 secrets for rebuilding trust in marriage. My guest, Grace, took an online quiz, and that's when she realized she was the victim of domestic violence. She followed what the books, counselors, and social workers told her to do, which was to separate. But she didn't want to end her marriage. So she did something radical and simple, but surprisingly effective to fix her marriage. Her husband still doesn't know what she did, but she's going to tell us so that you can do it too. Well, that's coming up. But first, let's get to 3 secrets for rebuilding trust in marriage. If you are trying to fathom how you could ever rebuild the trust in your marriage, it means you've had it broken in a big way. And that's so painful and scary because it seems so permanent. If you're feeling bad because you feel responsible for breaking your husband's trust, you might also be struggling to know how you can get that back, which is scary, and it can fill you with regret. Or if he let you down in a big way, you may feel like you just would be a sucker if you trust him again. Whether it was that he lied or cheated or spent money recklessly, it's completely natural to feel like vigilance, not trust, is the smart thing to do. Either way, I've got a terrific exercise for you that will help you powerfully rebuild the trust in your marriage. Wanting to rebuild the trust, that's like saying, you want to be the woman who expects the best from her husband and who gives him her best too. And the good news is you can be her again, and your husband can be the man who deserves your trust, or vice versa. We're going to talk about how to rebuild trust in both directions. So let's start with if you're the one who feels your trust was betrayed. Here's secret number 1 for rebuilding your trust. Here's what you can do. And that is pretend that you do trust him. Pretend that you do trust him. I had to stretch to trust my husband around managing our finances years ago, which was where I had the least amount of trust in him. And it took all my might. But I learned that the only way you can ever trust someone is because you decide to trust them. Trusting doesn't include checking up on someone to make sure they're behaving. That's the definition of doubt and mistrust. Trusting can involve wrestling with your own fears in the night or taking them to a third party, but not to the person that you're trusting. It doesn't mean you won't ever get hurt again. You might. So why on earth would you decide to trust again? Well, for one thing, being in a perpetual state of doubt is exhausting and painful. But I've discovered that the best reason of all to decide to trust my husband is because choosing my faith instead of my fear dramatically improves my chances that I'll experience the outcome I'm wanting. It's like that part in the Serenity Prayer where they talk about the courage to change the things I can. Sure, it's scary as heck sometimes, but as Ambrose Redmoon wrote, courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else is more important. Like trusting my husband to handle our bills. I was so afraid, but I decided it was more important to have financial intimacy with him than to just give in to my fear. And you know what? My fear that I couldn't count on him was wrong. He handles our finances beautifully. It's such a gift and a relief. Number 2, if you're the one who feels guilty for betraying his trust, talk to your future self about how you rebuilt the trust. Talk to your future self about how you rebuilt the trust. In the Ridiculously Happy Wife group coaching program and the Diamond private coaching program, we have a very popular training about talking to your future self, where I invite you to go a year in the future and ask yourself how things turned out in your relationship, so that you can find out, okay, and here's a spoiler alert right here. If you don't want to know how things turned out, we better turn off the recording right now. The thing that you find out a year from now is that everything went your way. everything went the way you wanted it to in your relationship. Your dreams came true and your relationship is better than ever. And the trust is through the roof for both of you and the emotional safety. So I invite you to spend some time visiting your future self and just fill out that vision for yourself about how strong and confident you feel about your relationship, how much trust there is between you. And after you do that part, which is critical, because you know what? You've got to have a vision. You got to have a vision, right? After that, ask yourself this powerful question. How would you show up differently today if you knew that your vision for a year from now was how things were going to turn out, that it was going to be better than ever, that the trust was going to be through the roof? What would you do differently today? And that's a really powerful way to shake off your fear and choose your faith. I always get blown away by hearing how my students use this training to actually get to the wonderful relationship they imagined when I invited them to do this exercise. So if they can do it, why not you too, right? All right. The number 3 secret for rebuilding trust is to get a tribe to stand for you. Get a tribe. And I know these suggestions that involve pretending and visualizing, they might sound too airy-fairy, or you may just struggle to get yourself to do them. You might have a lot of, yeah, but thoughts coming up right now. I get it. I'm inviting you to do some experiments that probably feel like a departure from reality, right? And I always want to encourage you to stretch, but never to tear. And one thing that helps me be brave and stretch when I'm feeling afraid is being with a like-minded group of women who want to see me succeed and who stand for my greatness and who are being brave themselves. It's contagious. And when I see them doing it, it makes me want to do the scary things that I'm nervous about too. It gives me wings. I see it with my students too. And if that's you, I mean, how weird that I'm talking about you in third person, right? I mean, what I mean to say is that you, who are part of my community of like-minded women who think marriage is important, you make me braver. You make me braver. And you do it by sharing your story on this podcast, as over 180 students have done. You do it by sharing your challenges and your insights so vulnerably in our group coaching programs. You do it by encouraging me with podcast reviews on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for that. I'm so grateful that you do those reviews. You do it by training to become a Laura Doyle certified relationship coach. You do it by being a Laura Doyle certified relationship coach. You do it by putting on workshops, Empowered Wife workshops. You do it by holding the Cherish for Life weekend. There's one coming up in Australia and an Empowered Wife workshop coming up in New Zealand. Thank you for that. Those make me braver. You make me braver by doing that. You make me braver by going to those events. You do it by using your voice to stand for marriage. And you do it by stretching to rebuild the trust in your marriage, even when it seems like it just won't work. Together, we really are rebuilding trust in marriage. Something big is happening here on the Laura Doyle campus, and you are invited. Hundreds of women have become experts on the 6 intimacy skills and transformed their marriages by becoming certified Laura Doyle relationship coaches who live their purpose, have more intimacy, and earn for their families. In my free masterclass, Purpose, Prosperity, and Intimacy, How to Have All 3 and Help Others Do the Same, I share directly from our popular relationship coach training and certification course about the number 1 most important qualification for becoming a successful relationship coach. I also reveal the indispensable first step to having a passionate, peaceful relationship and how to share it with other women. I explain about why our coaches have an unfair advantage over other relationship coaches and counselors. And I go step by step through our proven coaching curriculum and why it's so effective in saving marriages and empowering coaches. Register today for purpose, prosperity, and intimacy. Have all three and help others do the same at lauradoyle.org/purpose. That's lauradoyle.org/purpose. My guest, Grace, took an online quiz and realized she was the victim of domestic violence. She followed what the books and counselors and social workers told her to do, which was separate, but she didn't want to end her marriage. So she did something radical and simple, but surprisingly effective to fix her marriage. Her husband still doesn't know what she did differently, but she's going to share it with us so that you can do it too. Grace, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited to hear your story today. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So what were things like in the bad old days?
Oh, they were so bad. The way I described this to my counselor at the time was that the good times were great, but the bad times were terrible. We had been together for we were married for 14 years. We'd been together for longer. And things had just gotten progressively worse to the point where about 4 years ago, my husband told me that he hated me. Once he sat me down for 2 hours and he told me all the reasons why he hated me. And it goes without saying that there was very little love at this time. He was verbally abusive. He was physically aggressive. He'd block the doorways. He'd throw things. He'd hold onto my arm. He was mean with the kids. It was just getting worse and worse. And then a year ago, actually really close to exactly a year ago, it's my daughter's first birthday today, I was about to give birth to her, 6 days before her birth, and he assaulted me badly. Now, I've shared the details with you, but I'm going to spare your listeners exactly what happened. This was something that could have been lethal. He could have killed both me and the baby that day. And it attracted a lot of attention from police and from lawyers and from social workers, certainly from my counselor at the time. Everyone thought this is a clear case of not just domestic violence, but of really serious sort, and I have to get safe. But it took me another 2 months to do that. I think part of the trouble with domestic violence is that it degrades your personhood. You lose a lot of dignity in that, and it's hard to see how anything can come out of this, anything positive. It's hard to see the other person as anything other than the perpetrator. And it was hard for me to see, not just me as a victim, let alone a person. Things were just really muddy in that time.
Yeah, it's that. Thank you for saying that it degrades you as a person, because you have your firsthand account is so valuable, because I don't think this is something we get to hear about very often. And as I'm listening to you and looking at you, and you're very beautiful and young, and you just look put together. So and you sound well spoken. So it's hard to imagine you feeling like you've lost your dignity and feeling degraded. So much so that you couldn't get yourself to leave, even though you'd been assaulted in what could have been a lethal way, which it does sound very serious. It sounds absolutely terrifying, first of all, too. But I imagine there's also a lot of questions about, well, where are you going to go? What now? What? Like your whole world that you're standing on, the ground has just fallen in when something like that happens, I imagine.
Oh, for sure. This is 6 days before my baby is due. I knew she was going to come about when she did. So I call my midwife the next day and I say, I think I'm becoming a single parent and giving birth in the same week. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And bless her heart, she just cried. And so did I. I had no idea what the future would hold because I was so vulnerable and my children were so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think I shared this with you as well on the application, the podcast application. My view of self started off in a strange place because I believed that what my husband was doing to me was something I deserved. He told me I was the problem, and I believed that. And it took 2 months of a lot of hard work from a lot of people telling me this is not okay. Abuse is never something that you should live with, for me to see that there was a problem with him.
Wow. So your world was turned so upside down at that time that it sounds like you were taking responsibility for his physical assault. Wow.
That's right.
Wow. Okay. Okay. This is and that's what can happen. I think it could happen to any mere mortal woman who's been in this situation, right? This is not I think we have an idea that, well, that could happen to somebody who, I don't know, has low self-esteem or something. It really could happen to anyone. It could be degraded, your view of yourself over time and the things about what you deserve in terms of safety. Okay. Wow. Well, this is so valuable. Thank you so much for sharing so openly about this. So you did, after 2 months, you got to the place where you could separate from your husband.
I did. It came on suddenly. The police had sent people to the door to check on me, and I thought that he had seen them on our home security system. So I thought, I can't live with this double life anymore. And those 2 months, I had been to specialists and to lawyers and to the counselors that made a police statement and all these things that he didn't know I was doing for me to try and make sense of the situation. And that was the final straw where I thought, people are coming to my house now. And if he's confronted by this, I just don't know that I'm going to be safe because anytime he walks in the door, I am terrified. I am so scared. I remember one day I was nursing my baby and she fell asleep on my lap. And I just pushed myself into the back of the chair. And I sat there for 5 hours in the corner of the house, just thinking, if I don't move, he won't know I'm here. I'm going to be okay. It was a very scary time. So at the end of that 2 month period, I thought, I can't. I need to just do the next step. I can't see beyond that. If he's out of the house, at least I know that he's not going to hurt me right now.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. And did you have, so it sounds like you were getting support from the infrastructure, right? The like social workers, police, things like that, your midwife. What about family too? Were you able to lean on anyone else or did you feel isolated?
Oh, hugely. I didn't tell my family. The first that anyone in my family knew about it was after he left, and I called my sister and said, he's away for a few days. Do you think you could come and help? And she came and said to me, once the kids were in bed, he's not away for a few days, is he? Something happened. What's going on? I hid it so well. Only a few people knew. Certainly none in our social circles.
And what had you want to be secretive about it with your family?
Why? Oh, the shame is huge. You've said it as well. I don't think I look like whatever the stereotype might be of domestic
Mm-mm,
violence.
mm-mm,
And that's what
don't.
other people have said as well. They thought, oh, you had the perfect family. My
Yes.
husband is a well respected member of the community. He has a good job. He's put together. He's a nice guy, right? I wouldn't have married him if he wasn't a nice guy.
You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have. Yeah.
No. And I felt like such a failure because whatever I had tried to do to save my marriage, it clearly hadn't worked and it had nearly cost me my life.
Wow. So once your sister outed you though, that she knew that he had left. So then did you tell her all the details?
I did. I did. And it shocked her, as it possibly shocked you when you read my story as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty extreme. I think that's why I'm excited to be on your podcast because I've listened to several episodes and I could identify with some of what the other ladies have said, and I'm so grateful to them for coming out with their stories. But I thought there will be other people who need to know that even if you go to these depths, there's still hope. There can still be a future. I think for many more families than we've been led to believe.
Grace, that is amazing. I'm so moved by your desire to pay forward. What the entire experience to share the whole story with us. It's incredibly powerful. I have read about your story. This is the first time I'm hearing it from your mouth directly, and it is such a gift. So, and what an accomplishment. So, all right. So your sister's coming to help, and your husband's gone now. Did you feel safer?
It took some time because I think when someone has attacked your personhood and your character, that sense of threat is something that you internalize as well. But I did. Um, Part of me felt exhilarated. And a friend who had gone through something similar had told me I might feel that. I felt powerful because I had made at least one decision that was my good. That meant that things were going to get a little bit better, whatever the future looked like.
So you bought yourself some time and space to think clearly without, I don't know, I think about taking shallow breaths, right? When I'm very frightened or sitting in a chair, sitting lifeless for 5 hours, sitting perfectly still. So that would be exhilarating. I can imagine. And then did you file a restraining order or anything like that? Or was your husband still involved with your 3 children, or what happened there?
Mm. Um, he took it really hard. He didn't see this coming. The night that I asked him to leave, he'd come home and had prepared a nice dinner for us and had brought some special snacks for the weekend. And he was just pretending like everything was okay. Because remember, I was hiding all of this, including from him. So he was really shocked when he realized I was asking him to go straight away. One of us was leaving the house that night. Um, it took him a good week of being very sick and very upset. And then we saw each other again and the children, and he said he was sorry. That was a start. I was glad for that. Things didn't get better straight away at all because I hadn't taken out a restraining order at this point. But as the conversations went on over the months, I realized that he still saw things in a way that made me the bad guy. And I felt very unsafe with his view of me. So it was probably only 4 or 5 months after this that I asked him to sign a voluntary restraining order through a lawyer. That was
Yeah,
a big move. It was a really bold move. He didn't
very,
really like
very,
it.
very scary. He didn't like
Yeah.
it?
No, he didn't see the point. I think he saw himself as something of a victim. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah. Wow. So that must have been a bit shocking for you that he still felt that way.
It was because I had come to a place where I had finally seen that what he did was wrong and not justifiable in the least.
No.
And I wanted him to share that picture that was very black and white, really, where he was the perpetrator and the abuse was completely his problem. And I thought that if I take any responsibility for any part that I've had in this relationship, that, the parts that have gone wrong, that it would mean that he won't take responsibility for his.
Yeah. That seems logical, doesn't it? Like, why would you wouldn't, yeah, you can't take any of that off of him. It was his bad behavior that got you to this point. And I'm sure that was being reinforced by everyone you were talking to. Uh, you must have gotten a lot of encouragement to just file the divorce.
That's right. Everyone says this is the safest. You need to think about your children. And of course, I believe in safety first. So,
Of
whatever
course.
that looks like for someone who's listening, safety first. Always safety first. I'm really
Always.
glad that safety was first and then I could think, but it might not have to mean separation for other people. I don't know. That's their story, right?
That's their story. Yeah. You're just the expert on your life
Mm,
and you have this experience to share. And it was some experience that you've been through. Uh, and there's just tremendous hope in your story as well. So, yeah. So what kept you from filing that divorce?
I deep down still wanted a happy marriage. And when I could connect with that pure desire, as you have taught us, I knew that that's what I wanted. I wasn't willing to put up with a marriage where I felt threatened or where my children were in harm's way. I wasn't okay with a marriage where my husband saw me as someone to walk all over and for him to have whatever he wanted. But a happy marriage, I would love a happy marriage. And there was just this tiniest glimmer of hope that maybe there was something I hadn't tried yet, or hope I hadn't seen yet, even though I had no idea where that was going to come from. I couldn't see anything other than the situation I was in. And I think I had come from a broken family myself, and I had seen that the effects of divorce reach down through generations. my kids don't know what happened to their grandparents, but they feel it. They know that their grandparents aren't together, and that they live in different countries from each other, and that we don't have that connected kind of family. And it's a really big price to pay if you don't absolutely have to, I think.
It is a big price to pay. Yeah, you're making me cry right now because I'm from a divorced family as well, and
Oh.
yeah, I think you do feel it. Future generations do feel it. So uh, yeah, I get that. It transfers to your children, even with your best efforts, they still feel this pain that you certainly must have felt too when that divorce happened. All right, so what happened?
So what happened? Um, so where are we at?
Well, let me ask you this too. What else did you do to try to fix your marriage? Did you do some marriage counseling
Oh yeah,
okay, tell us about that. What happened?
yeah. No, of course. No, we tried marriage counseling. Um, that got us through for a little while. It helped a little bit, kept us going. We did the marriage retreats, and I read all of the marriage books, and I listened to all of the talks, and spoke with lots of people, and I tried everything I knew to do, and it just wasn't working. Things were getting worse because the more I pushed my husband to try and fix our marriage too, the more he retreated into himself and his hobbies. I thought that I needed him to get on board with this picture that I had of a happy marriage, and that I knew the solution because I was reading all of the books and listening to all of the experts, and he wasn't doing any of it. I needed to teach him, right?
What was he supposed to do that he wasn't doing?
Ah, sit down with me and stare into my eyes. Listen to my complaints about everything that's wrong in our marriage. That would have been so nice. Just kidding. Um, I wanted him to take accountability for the abuse. I
Yeah,
really did.
yeah.
And I think that is an important step. But I see now that that was never going to happen when I was going to make him do these certain things, or to respond in, frankly, quite a female way to the problem. All of the domestic violence resources that are quite helpful, and I would still refer to them, I guess, in certain situations. They say that for someone to be shown as safe, they need to go through certain steps. And that includes things like having an accountability partner, being part of a group program, going to counseling, um, talking a lot about your feelings and your past. And I can see now why that would be a very uncomfortable position for anyone to be in, but especially also a man.
Mm.
And maybe this is why we're seeing very few men step up to that kind of picture.
Yes. So in order to be safe, he had to talk a great deal about his feelings and have this accountability partner and be a part of this group. Uh, and he wasn't willing to do those things.
Does that sound appealing to you if you were in his position?
No, it doesn't. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. In fact, and it's been my experience that my husband does not like to talk about his feelings at all. If I ask him how he feels, he usually says, hungry or with my hands or something like that. Right. So he won't, he's not gonna. So, I can see where, as you say, especially for a man, that would be very uncomfortable, if not downright impossible. So you were waiting for him to do all these things. He was not doing all those things. Then what?
So frustrating. He wasn't doing any of
So
it.
frustrating. So
Now what?
frustrating. So hopeless, right? Hopeless.
I Yeah, I can't influence this. I thought there's nothing I can do to fix this. The more I try, the more I talk to him about what the problems are, or just bring up, a little part of our past history that we think we need to sort out. It's just getting worse. It's just getting worse. And then at New Year's, I took the children camping with some friends as well. By myself, what was I thinking? And he came out for a day. And we had some friends from far away who had joined me there at the camp. And the lady sat me down and she said, I have hope for your marriage. And I'm going to pray for you 3 times a day. Bless her. Um,
What?
you have the right, you have the right husband, and he has the right wife.
Oh,
This is not a mistake because you can both learn to be better people through this. And she did. She's prayed and she sent me some some good books and things. And then I did something that was absolutely life-changing, and I changed browsers. I changed search engines.
Sorry, you changed what?
Search engines.
From which search engine did you switch to? I want to hear about this. You were searching in one search engine and you were not finding things, and then you switched to.
Mm-hmm. So I was using the world's most popular search engine, Google, and every time I was looking for what other people had done in certain situations like mine, some relationship advice, I was coming up with the same refrain of just leave him, just move on. You know, get someone better. You don't deserve this, all that. And then I had heard that Google filters search results according to an algorithm that on some topics may have an agenda. And I don't know if this is true, but I thought I would just try to go for a search engine that values privacy more and that values freer access to data. So I did. And then the next time I Googled relationship advice, I found you. Changed my
Wow.
life.
Amazing. Amazing. And so this friend had already sort of spoken to you that there was hope for your marriage,
Mm.
which is remarkable. It's just amazing, right? What a gift to have this friend do that. And you found something of mine. What did you find, or what struck you? What do you remember about that?
I found your website. I thought I haven't seen this before. That's a start. With Google, I would always come up with the same boring, stale advice on the same websites. I read it and I was incredulous. I thought, this lady, I don't think she knows what my life is like. Surely she hasn't seen anything as bad as this before. I don't think it can work. This sounds like I would be disrespecting my history as a domestic violence victim if I give my marriage another shot and try these techniques. And surely I've tried all these things, right? But there was something that stuck with me, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I thought I'll just try it. Just give it a go. What do I have to lose?
Mm,
Maybe she's onto something.
mm,
I think what also helped was the stories of all the other people who have learned from you as well, that this wasn't just your idea out of your head, although you have a beautiful head and wonderful ideas. It's something that has shown itself to be workable for many people.
Well, I think I would just want to pause on this point for a second, because I think you make a really good point that you didn't want to dismiss what you had been through, what you had experienced. I think that is important, right? And both can be true, even though domestic violence is how you describe what happened. And I would describe it that way too. So it's part of your story. It's an indelible part of your story. Um, but it felt like doing some of the intimacy skills, it sounds like, felt like you would be sort of pretending that didn't happen. Do I have that right?
At first,
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's important, because I don't want anyone to feel like their experience is not their experience, right? You are the expert on your life. You know your story. You know what's happened. So what did you decide to start trying differently than what you had been doing?
mm, we were going away camping again. This was the summer where I live. Um, we have a tradition of going away every year with two other families. And we had kept that booking despite our separation, despite what happened, thinking maybe I would just take the kids, or maybe he would come and he would stay in another part of the camp or something. We weren't sure. Anyway, we ended up doing this. And I had signed up to your Ridiculously Happy Wife program the day before and had binge watched all through the night. I know I'm not meant to do it, but I did. So I had just enough of what the intimacy skills were to say, maybe I could just experiment. And so I did. That weekend, I kept my mouth shut a lot more. I didn't take the bait when he was trying to get into an argument. He asked for my opinion, and I smiled inside and said, "Ooh, I get to say whatever you think." So I did. I made myself pretty. I smiled a lot. I was just a fun person. And these were just little changes because I didn't know a lot. I hadn't soaked in your skills for very long. But we had the best holiday we had had in years, maybe in our entire marriage. I don't know. It was so much fun because we got on just a little bit better than we had in the past. And I thought, oh my goodness, I think it's Vicky. I think there's something to this. Ooh,
That must have taken a lot of courage to do that, Grace.
I needed to pretend for a little bit, But I told myself I'm still honoring who I am. I'm honoring the relationship I have, the reality of that. I'm just experimenting. I can always go back to the basics first if I really want to. Really don't want to. So this is worth giving it a go.
I love it. I love that you did that. So this gave you even more hope. This put fuel on the fire of your hope that there was something about your family that could be fixed and saved.
Those little changes felt miraculous to me. They felt like they had come out of another world because I had come from a place where things were so bad. To see just a little bit of normalcy, even just a friendship, the glimmers of a friendship was so exciting.
Ugh, it is exciting. I feel excited just getting to hear about that from the dark place that you came, just to see that little bit of light coming through. So then where were you? You were still separated at this time. The camping trip ended. What was life like there?
Well, we are still separated today, and it's okay right now. I learned how I've summed up your skills to other people is that I learned that I was not going to pretend to be something I wasn't. This is about self-respect and giving respect. And so I restored my dignity through your skills, really. Interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Um, I stayed with that program for a month. I learned everything that I could about you. And then my arm broke. I went roller skating with my children because remember, I am now the girl of fun and light. I like to do adventurous things. And darn it, it means I fell over and I broke my arm. I'm so glad I found your skills prior to that because even just in a few weeks of me trying these things out, my husband had begun to see a change. So when I really needed him to step up, he did. He dropped what he was doing and he moved home for the week actually, and looked after me and the children. He wasn't entirely happy to be there at first. He was justifiably upset that I had this accident and it was really inconvenient with the baby. But that's okay. I'm staying on my paper. You know, his emotional reaction is to have, and I don't need to get upset at that either. I can just say, I hear you. I understand this. I'm upset too. Yeah. I could keep my own inner peace in this time. And it was at the end of that week that we said to each other, this has gone so well. And actually, we really like being together. Maybe we could look at you moving back full time.
Oh, exciting. Unbelievable. So what about the terror that you were feeling before when you were around him? Like that was gone?
We had been separated for about 8 months. Yes, it was on the 8th-month anniversary of him moving out, that we had this conversation about him moving back. And prior to finding your skills, we had made some progress, and especially for me, having that voluntary restraining order signed, that gave me some security that I knew that he understood I was really serious about no violence, no threats of violence, and that I had some legal backing to that as well. So that sense of threat had dissipated quite a lot, but a lot of the resentment and bitterness had stayed behind, and certainly the frustration at seeing what I thought was no action on his part about restoring our marriage. I'm glad the terror had gone though, because we had enough of that groundwork done that when I found your skills, we were ripe and ready for it. We had fertile soil.
Fantastic. Wow. All right. Was there anything else that you did skills wise? I mean, I hear a lot of skills. You stayed on your paper. You said, I hear you. You're the girl of fun and light. You were roller skating. You said whatever you think. I hear a lot of things that you were able to implement in a pretty short time. Anything else that you did that you think was, part of the solution that you found?
I think respect and relinquishing control was really important for me. Previously I had said that I wanted him to take full responsibility for the state of our marriage. And certainly the abuse is his responsibility. That's on his paper. His behavior is his issue.
That's right.
And he's responsible to be a safe person around me and the children. But I had missed that I had failed to create emotional safety on my side. in our marriage. And even though I had known to do some of these things instinctively, like show gratitude to him, um, I was pretty good at thanking him for the things that he did. He's told me that he never felt safe with that because I would sabotage the emotional safety. I would do these little things that were good and then also complain and criticize and be helpful and have strong opinions about all the little ways that you run a household and what he should be doing with his life. And it just confused him. He could never get to a sense of knowing how I was going to respond because he was so afraid I would just criticize and control in ways I didn't recognize were criticizing and controlling until you taught us that. When I stopped doing those things, when I stopped just having opinions about his life and making little comments about this is the way I would do it, that's when the emotional safety was restored enough and he became vulnerable with me. I think that's so exciting to me because I have not just learned these skills for myself, he's also mirroring them back to me. So I'm getting more of the things that I want from him as well.
Wow. So it's changed the culture in your home. You've changed the way you interact, you and your husband both, by just showing up with all this emotional safety for him.
That's right. And without me manipulating him into being a different person, I have learned that I just need to look after my response and show up as my best self, look after my self-care and make myself happy, right?
Yes.
And he's responding to me differently. There's no manipulation involved. There's no having to push for him to be a different person. It's what he wanted to be anyway. Thank God. And now it can come out.
This is super exciting. So he's a good man. He's a wonderful man.
Yes, I can see that now. He's a mere mortal man, and I am a mere mortal woman.
That's right. That's right. And I think I hear you were terrified of him, but it sounds like he also was afraid of you.
Isn't that an incredible thing to have to admit? I thought it was all him.
I know. It was so nice when I used to be able to just blame my husband for all of our problems. It was nice in a way, but then again, not really, because we were sort of stuck there. And for you also, right? And it was so clear. His transgressions were so obvious, right? And so big, and everyone was bought into it. The social workers, the police, everyone. So it really is such an amazing act of humility and courage to become accountable for your part. And I'm very impressed that you got to that part and created this miracle. So what is your relationship like now? What is your marriage like?
What's it like? We are still separated. I've told him that it's up to him when he decides to move back. If he decides to move back, that's on his paper. The kids and I are fine. That's taken a lot of pressure off for him. So currently now, he turns up at our house and he brings us dinner, and then he does all of the dishes and he puts the kids to bed, and I get to sit back. I say, would you like me to help? He's like, no, that's fine. I'll do this. He comes and he fixes things. He came over Easter. The kids were sick, so we couldn't go away. The kids and I were going camping again. And he came and he's changed his plans, and he stayed for the whole weekend and filled the house with groceries and entertained the children. Wow. This one particular day, it was so much fun. We're going on dates now. His idea, he buys me lunch, and he changes his work day to fit around when my babysitter is here. So it's not a convenient time for him, but he does it. And he takes me to nice places. And he said, so what's different about you anyway? The last few months, it's like there's been a complete 180 in how you treat me. I didn't tell him, but I was so excited. And that same conversation, he said, I don't know what you think about this, but what would you say that we don't go to marriage counseling? Would it be okay with you if we just skip that? Because I think we're doing quite well at sorting that out.
What a wonderful acknowledgement. You probably want to do a little victory dance because he's really saying, Grace, you have improved so much. You've come such a long way.
Yeah. We have.
it must have been such an incredible moment for him to hear him acknowledge that you have grown, you've developed yourself, you've become the best Grace possible. And that's really what he was saying to you in that moment, wasn't it?
It was. And he said to me, um, in the past, I've said that, I need time, I need consistency over time. He had thought that he needed to be the one to change because he did finally see that what he did was a problem. And he said, but now it's the opposite. This miracle has happened in you, and I'm just waiting for it to fall apart again. I can't believe this is a real change. And I just smiled and said, oh, I hear you. I understand. Right? It's hard for him to see that there's been such a complete change in how I've treated him. And I'm happy with that. We put the kids to bed and we sat down to talk about it. And he said, I've been sick. I'm so scared of your response. So just cut to the chase. Tell me off for this. And I took a deep breath and I said, I love you. I respect you. And I trust you to sort this out. And then I applied duct tape. I just stayed quiet. And he looked at me like, what? That's it?
Like, who are you? What have you done with my wife?
I know. Where's the verbal barrage? Where's making me feel like dirt again, right? And I did. I just stayed quiet and left him to it for a few days. And after that, he came to me and apologized. He hadn't done this before. And he had done a lot of thinking, had sought advice, out of his own initiative and had taken it on board. Had done his own reading and all these things that I wished that he would do in the past, but because I didn't push him and I communicated clearly and backed it up with the way I had treated him, that I do really trust him to sort out his own life. He did. He stepped up better than I could have imagined.
And these are all the things you were wishing he would do when you were trying to get him to do all these things. It sounds like with the accountability partners and the groups and all that, the self-reporting. And now here he was doing it spontaneously. He was volunteering. He did it on his own initiative, like magic or some kind of miracle or something.
Doesn't it just?
Yeah, it is.
So when I had thought about experimenting with your skills, I thought, I don't know the future of my relationship, but maybe the best I could hope for at that point, that I wouldn't have an enemy anymore. I thought if we're going to be exes, at least we can be nice exes to each other. That would be good for the children. And it's true. That's something to aim for. I'm just glad I don't have to settle for that because I have my marriage back.
Wow. And it sounds like your vision for your future is also very optimistic. Like you think he'll be moving back.
He's already started. Some of his things have come back and he's been going through his drawers and he's moved back furniture. Yeah.
Wow. And what about those 3 babies of yours? How do you think this has impacted them?
I think for me, learning these skills, I couldn't learn them in isolation, even though I thought I was just learning about how to treat my husband. It's really been about how I see myself and my place and who I am. I describe myself now as a respectful person and as someone with dignity and self-control. And it's made me a much better mother as well. So my children are happy. They still miss their dad and they wish things had never happened, that it happened. I see them respond much better to my training of them. I see them being calmer and kinder to each other as well. It's really changed our family in ways I could never have predicted.
So you are more dignified and calmer yourself, it sounds like, and you're seeing that reflected in your children, and also more confident. Is it fair to say more confident?
For sure.
For sure. Yeah. You seem very confident now, which is very appealing. So what is your tip? Let's speak to someone now who's listening, who is also identifies with domestic violence and assault, a serious situation where she's had to make herself safe. But she wants what you have now, where he comes over and entertains the kids and does all the dishes while you relax and tells you that you've done a 180 and it's making him want to be a better man as well. what should she do? What's your best, what's your best tip for her?
My best tip. I feel for that woman.
Yeah,
I really do. This is such a hard road.
it's a hard road.
It's a hard road. Safety first. Always safety first. Your life is worth it. Your children's life is worth it. They need you. Whatever safety looks like right now, it's going to be the best call to make. And after that, these intimacy skills, they really are as good as they say on the packet. Well, it was worth me reading your book and worth me signing up to your program and worth me listening to your podcast. It certainly wasn't hard work because you're fun as well. And you talk with amazing women who I would love to meet one day in person. My best tip is just to try. You have nothing to lose to learn these intimacy skills. I think you'll be surprised at how well they work on any person. Remembering that we are not manipulating, right?
No.
It's about who we become. There's more growth here for you. And I think when life is stripped, when it falls apart like this and it's stripped back and you have to look at the bare essentials of what's important, that's the time when we are ready for the most growth. So I'm excited for anyone who has found this podcast in your work because I think there's so much to be gained.
So inspiring. So, we talk about not letting the pain go to waste around here. And that's exactly what I see you doing. You're not letting this pain go to waste as far as your own transformation, or the women who are listening right now, anyone who hears your story, that pain is now, your gold. It was heartbreak. It was absolute, crushing heartbreak for a while. And now it's a victory. Now it's an accomplishment that we can celebrate. I'm definitely doing my happy dance. I'm going to give you a wife award pretty soon. But really, I have one other question for you first, which is, if you could go back in time and tell Grace what you know now, what would you say?
I would say some of the same things I say to my husband now. I would say, I hear you. It's okay. You are worth listening to as well. I trust you to figure this out. I respect you. I wish I had learned these skills a lot earlier. I have to trust that they've come at a point in my journey when I was ready to receive them, even though I regret not having known these things from the time I was born, right? I would tell her you are safe and you are loved and you deserve that. And things are going to be okay in the long run, whatever happens. Whatever the circumstances look like, you're going to be okay.
Beautiful. So gentle and nurturing and loving words for yourself, which I love to hear. Well, Grace, I do want to give you my wife award because this is the most incredible accomplishment. You fixed your family, 5 souls, right? You and your husband and those 3 babies. You've stopped the cycle of divorce that was part of your history. Your family's going to look different going forward. And I give you all the credit for trying those experiments, even though it was scary. And I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you for what you do. I'm so grateful that you've stepped up in your own story and you've shared this with the world.
I'm so glad that we found each other. So thank you so much. It's just been wonderful. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll talk about the best marriage support group. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that if a recipe starts out with preheat the oven to 400 degrees. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. You don't know my oven.